At the RSA Conference in San Francisco, strong authentication was nearly as big as cloud computing. For compliance and security reasons, in the cloud and on the ground, enterprises need to prove physical identities match the logical identities accessing applications and data. Strong authentication helps do that. It means proving you are who you say you are, with something you have and with something you know. Many enterprise employees have badges or other credentials to get into a building. They know a password, and passwords now can be generated electronically so they change each time an employee logs in. Tie together an employee's physical and logical access tools, and you add another level of security to strong authentication. During RSA, Security Squared talked with a variety of identity experts about converging physical and logical credentials.
So, as corporations move to try and streamline operations, physical systems have become more sophisticated, and logical systems have also become more sophisticated. You are seeing the username and password begin to fade away. Even though it's still prevalent, we all know the inherent security weaknesses of the username and password. So now you look at solutions that bring that together. Well, where do those systems converge? And really the systems converge at one point, and it's the identity credential. So you have physical systems using systems that are in place today to physically log in, whether that's using a mag stripe and a pin pad or a contactless form factor, and then coming into the infrastructure and using logical access. So smart card based authentication, where you can insert a card into a reader using something you have in the card, and a pin pad or a pin and passphrase to get onto the logical network. So that really becomes the place of convergence, where you have one credential that now is providing you both access to the physical location and logical access to the network.
One of the biggest things I see around the convergence of logical, physical, as well as network-based convergence of single sign-on is as you start getting access to more things. As an example, enterprise single sign-on, one password may now give someone access to 15 different applications. That's been one of the bigger drivers of the last year or two. For those customers who have deployed enterprise single sign-on, they probably have about a twice as high array of deploying an integration of, let's say, a physical card access to a building, using that same physical card to access a workstation in addition to a user ID and password. So that's been a big driver. The technology to have this integration has existed probably for 5 years. We've had the ability with our Tivoli security products to go ahead and do that with different companies' card systems, as well as network security vendors, physical hardware. So that ability has been there for a long time, but as you start getting to some very common usage, that's driving that next wave. So as we see CIOs who are responsible for all three of those trying to push their organizations, or a company where a systems integrator is getting paid to integrate all three of those, then we see a bigger adoption. But in general, it's not been something that's been done a lot yet. But we're definitely seeing an uptick in interest over the last 12 to 18 months.
Yet, obstacles still get between merging logical and physical credentials.
I think the two things that are holding it back at the moment is one, a couple of things. The costs associated with having a physical logical access control product like a smart card, the credentials that you're trusting to do that. So it needs to be somebody that you're going to trust, hopefully within your organization and outside. If you're looking at online applications such as Salesforce.com that you want to access, then you need to be able to trust those credentials across the groups. The second thing I think that's holding it back at the moment is that there hasn't been a lot of companies who have combined the two at the moment, who can provide both physical access control as well as logical access control, bringing those two systems together and then manage it all in the back end. That's coming, but there's not groups that are doing it now. And finally, the last thing I believe that's holding it back at the current time, which will come across, is the various groups within organizations who are the buyers. So the protection of your physical access tends to be a different group than it is for your logical access, which is more of an IT type of group. So you have these different organizational structures that need to work together, and anytime you get into any sort of large organization, that's always going to be an issue. So we think that's coming. We're certainly seeing a lot more questions about it and a lot more people interested in it, but there's some kinks to be worked out in the industry.
Several vendors were at RSA with strong authentication solutions that use what enterprise employees already have. Passlogix introduced its Vigo Universal Authentication Manager. The solution allows employees to use their existing building badge or smart card as a second factor of authentication when they log into the enterprise network.
So an employee on day one would be provisioned their smart card or their building badge, would go to their desktop, tap in or read in, and then our software would pop up. You'd hit enroll my card, and you'd go through a few series of screens that ask you for you to enroll with your PIN number, your username, what you want to name that device, and after that, you'd be done. And from there, if an organization also deploys our enterprise single sign-on abilities, our softwares, then all of their credentials would also be able to be managed from that one card.
Meanwhile, PhoneFactor was showing its new SMS text messaging authentication platform. When an employee logs in with a name and password, the platform sends a text message to his mobile device. The employee responds to the text, which may include another password to enter. Because the authentication happens on a second device or channel, that makes it out of band and adds another layer of security.
The good news about a fully out-of-band solution is that you don't have to modify the app. So, for example, let's say you have a proximity card solution to get through doors at your office. Well, we can actually, using an SMS verification, if you go to, say, an area of the campus that you're not usually in, you swipe your Prox card, and we can trigger a PhoneFactor authentication that sends you an SMS. You reply to the SMS, and that unlocks the door. That way, there's proof to the IT department that the user really is trying to do that, and somebody hasn't simply stolen their Prox card and is trying to break into a new spot on the campus. But the larger point is that because it's phone-based and because it's fully out of band, there's no requirement to modify the app. There's no requirement to modify the user interface. So that would work at things like ATMs or point-of-sale systems, or just any program you don't have the source code to. Windows or a terminal server or something. So that's an important characteristic of the system.
I think it's important that people start to look at not only using a card for one thing, but keeping everyone on one. How many cards can we all carry to work? Remember to bring. I think it's really important that organizations start to look at how can I leverage this investment that I've already made for something else. So if you don't have to purchase additional cards, additional products, you've already invested in that. Use that and make it work for you in other places.
Convergence at the credential may yet have some hills to climb before it is widely adopted. Yet its ability to make strong authentication stronger should help smooth its path. This is Sharon J. Watson reporting for Security Squared.